Welcome back, everybody. I just got this dropped off literally a few minutes ago by a customer. This is during the time of the human malware event in 2020 here, and so I'm not really busy at the moment because most of America is shut down. But the computer will not post, and I had the customer explain a little bit how they acquired the computer, and eventually they told me that they built it. And so they have a 9900K in this Corsair AIO, and I believe this is also a Corsair. This is the Corsair View case, I want to believe. It looks like they've chosen some fairly decent parts. There's a Seasonic power supply, and it looks like it is one of the Focus Golds, and I don't know how many watts that is. We have a ASUS. Let's see, this is a Strix 2080 Ti, if that's what he told me that he had. And we have, I don't even know how much the RAM there is. And then this is the ASUS Republic of Gamers Z. I want to say, I can't even see where the numbering is on it, but it is the Z something chipset, I want to believe, right off the top of my head. I'll get that later. But basically, the system won't post into Windows. They're getting a chassis intrusion message in the BIOS. What I found out right away was that they may have hooked up this AIO incorrectly because there's no CPU fan header connected. The AIO pump is, I believe this is connected incorrectly because this looks like it's going into one of the fans, but it's not. I just had to take the whole thing apart, but we'll see what happens. Looks like this the wiring is a little bit all over the place, so I'm gonna, first things first, it's not too dirty, it's dirty enough that I don't want to really touch it. I'm going to actually go and take a air compressor to this and get the AIO. This is the I'm taking off the magnetic filter first, and I'm going to take it outside and just go through it with an air compressor, and then I'll come back in, start taking it apart, and see what might be causing other problems. Okay, so this is what we're getting on the post screen. We have 16 gigs of DDR4 and a 2 terabyte Seagate hard drive and a 500 gig 8 Samsung Evo, and we have the chassis extrude and CPU fan error, FATA error. Just take a look. Well, here's the system itself just running real quick. So there's a lot of RGB. These guys really wanted to bling it out, but let's see what's going on with it. Here's the back of the case, and it's hard to figure out what's going where, so I'm gonna redo this the best I can. Not much you can do because there's a clear side panel here in which you can see all the wiring. I don't get why that is, but because you can't make it any prettier without some kind of special braiding or covering on it. But let's see what we can do, and let's see what is this. Oh, looks like it's the LED for the case. Okay, we'll figure it out. Okay, I had to take the whole thing apart. Basically, the BIOS wasn't recognizing the video card and a bunch of other stuff, and so like we said before, it was wired incorrectly. So I've just moved the AIO to the side, and everything's disconnected because everything was kind of messy. So I wanted to rewire it, make sure nothing's shorting out in the system. I got it to boot into Windows finally, but they have a 2 terabyte drive that they're using as a main boot drive. They have a 500 gig Samsung Evo 860, but they never initialized it. Or maybe they did initialize it and the short just shorted it out. I don't know. I have just initialized it. And so I had to give them a call on what they want to do on that. But I'm going to run some benchmarks first before I decide to wire up the system. So what I'm going to do is just going to run a graphics benchmark, and then maybe a Prime benchmark, Prime 95. Okay, here we have it running Valley benchmark, and I just have it set to ultra, but it's at a low resolution since it's on this repair monitor here. We're getting around 200 frames per second, so it's quite a bit. And it's hovering around 55, 56 degrees Celsius, so I'm just gonna let this run for about 30 or 40 minutes. Just make sure that everything's stable here. There's no intake coming in here, so this is just really passively kind of cooled right here, the graphics card here. So the AIO is just flipped around, and it's not mounted or anything. and there's no fans running in the front either. So after we test the graphics card to make sure that it's stable and that it doesn't overheat and it gives us consistent frame rates, then we're going to run a Prime 95 test. Make sure everything's stable on the CPU side and that the AIO is actually working correctly. Then I'll start to rewire the computer and get it all set for the customer. Okay, so it did pass the valley benchmark. It ran over for about 45 minutes or so. So temperature stayed the same, and frame rates actually basically the same. So excuse me. So I called that a success. Right now I'm just running Prime 95. It's an older version of it, but as we can see here, the temperatures are in the mid 60s, and they are staying pretty much stable right there. And it's going so far. I can't remember how many passes it's done. Hasn't been too long yet, but right now I have the AIO just popped up against the back here, and there's a lot of hot air coming out. So I just really wanted to make sure that the pump was working right and that nothing had been damaged because they had wired this system incorrectly. So I'm gonna wait a little bit longer, and if it passes this, you know, and the temperature stays stable, then I'm going to call that a success, and I'm going to start putting the system back together and rewiring it. Well, it's getting a little bit later on in the day, and because of the human malware, we're going to close up a little bit early at the shop here. So I wanted to get as close as I didn't want to leave this overnight, just because I did not bolt the AIO in place. It's actually just standing here. So, but what we see here is that the CPU is at 64 degrees Celsius, and it's been passing most of the tests, so I'm very confident that the AIO is working, and I didn't overclock this yet. The only reason why I really ran the Prime 95 was honestly to test the AIO and also to test the memory settings, because the memory is at 3200 megahertz right now, so it is a bit overclocked. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull this out, and we're just going to stop the test here. So I'm going to go up here and I'm going to stop Prime 95, and we're going to stop all the workers here. So I didn't run it for too long. I only ran it for 23 minutes, you know, so, but at that time, I'm sorry, in 31 minutes, so roughly half an hour, and everything stayed pretty stable, so I'm pretty much confident in it. It's a fairly new components, and right now it's, as you can see, it's dropped to 31 degrees Celsius, and everything's good. The only thing that they don't have is the USB connector, and there's supposed to be a USB, there's a header here, a micro USB header. So it's the really micro, the mini USB header, micro USB header versus the mini USB header. So I have mini USB headers from previous AIOs, and it's not going to fit in this, and I don't have it. It's not necessary, because all that gives you is the ability to change certain settings in the OS. So otherwise, as you see, without that, it worked perfectly fine, because we have the fan header connected correctly and the temperatures were correct. And so it's something that would be nice to have, but since they don't have it, so be it. Well, tomorrow, come in and put it all together and call the customer. Okay, all the tests are done, and I have it finally put back together, so it looks like a Christmas tree. I'm going to turn on the lights here, auxiliary lights. Because they don't have the USB cable here that goes into the pump header to the main board, we can't really control any of the, I believe maybe the fan lighting with the built-in software. I can control the motherboard lighting and sync it to the graphics card, since they're both ASUS products, but I can't control this strip, and I'm going to turn off the light here. I don't know if you can see it, but you can actually see Republic of Gamers logo. This is a magnetized strip here, so it's pretty nice. It's just that it wouldn't stay in place, so I put a zip tie in the back there. Some thoughts about the case. Actually, it's got a lot of lighting, and I don't know if that came with the case or not. I think these guys actually paid quite a bit of money for these lighting kits. If I turn this, if I press this, it doesn't control anything. So it only controls the lighting strip. As you can see, if I can press the button, we have solids. Then I believe it goes to an alternating Christmas lights. and then what does it do? It does more Christmas lights, and then a pulsating, and that kind of stuff. So I'm not a big fan of just this kind of Christmas lighty thing. I'm sure it would look nice if it was done right, I guess, but just the way it is, I'm not too big of a fan. These lights on the front, I mean, they are pretty bling. I wish I could turn them off though. Here's the back. Now there is a hub, Corsair hub here and here. These guys had actually bought them, so unfortunately, there's, again, like I said, there's no way to really control them. All it does is that it actually gives it controls the RGB lighting. And this oddly has a USB connector, a micro USB to the motherboard, but when I installed the software, we couldn't interface with this and can't do anything with it. There's a lot of wires in this case, a lot, and then it took a while to do all the wiring in the case. I'm not a very big fan of this case here in terms of the wiring and cable management. There just isn't much you can do. There's a lot of space here, but unfortunately, there's a clear glass panel that you actually see through, which I don't think is very cool, because why would you want to see all these cables? I mean, I guess maybe some people would. There's also a clear see-through case side panel here, and so, but the performance is pretty good in the system. You can see the RGB lighting up there and everything else. There's pretty decent airflow. I was really surprised at how much airflow these front fans are actually providing. This is pretty dirtied up and linted up, and so I didn't think that I'd be able to pull in that much air, but I guess it does pull a lot of air from the bottom here and from the left and right side, so I guess it's decent enough. The top has this magnetic filter, and I'm going to put it on right now, and since it's exhausting, I don't know if that's the best idea. It's already pretty dirty. I didn't clean this out in any way, but from afar the case looks pretty nice, and the system is pretty much set to go. I installed a new installation of Windows 10 Professional on their SSD, and so here we have it. We have the Core i9-9900K, boost of 4.3, stocks 3.6, 16 megs of level 3 cache. We have the RAM overclocked at 3200 megahertz, 16 gigs of it. The Seagate 2TB drive, and the Samsung 860 EVO. And these guys I don't think they knew what they were doing when they purchased the 860 EVO, but otherwise, pretty good system, especially if you just want to really game. And not to say you can't do other things, but definitely can. They really threw a lot of money into it, but unfortunately, they just didn't know how to build the system for longevity, and their wiring wasn't up to par. So hopefully this will last them for a while. All the tests are done, and so I feel pretty confident giving it back to the customer. Any question or comments, please post them at the bottom of the video. Let me know if you guys want to see any more of these full-length, somewhat full-length repair videos, and I will do my best to oblige.